It is almost midnight. It's 11:56 p.m. on Wednesday, April 2nd, 2024. Mark Kulak, Houston.live. And this is a very short video. I just wanted to highlight some pieces of information. And much of this has to do with building off of the program that Jonathan Cooey, GigaOhm Biological, launched today in his series called Biology 101. Now, Jonathan Cooey is the lead on this part here. He has the PhD in the science. I have my own areas of expertise and data collection and archival. But I just wanted to put out there some data to impress upon you perhaps some of the significance. And you'll have to go to gigaohm.biological.com because that's where he's hosting it right now. A lot of what you're going to hear about is something called a bacteriophage. BACTERIO PHAGE or ES, or bacteriophages. Much of my audience has probably heard of this before, what a bacteriophage is. Many people haven't. I certainly never heard of it until a few years ago after the COVID-19 started and was put into a situation where I needed to figure out what was going on, or felt as though I needed to figure out what was going on anyways. So a bacteriophage is often described as a virus that is particular to or specific to bacteria. So multi-cell organisms have their viruses. I'm just saying this is the general understanding, okay? And bacteria have their viruses. And bacteriophages they're usually drawn as some type of lunar lander object. Whereas the viruses of typical multi-celled animals, eukaryotes, they tend to be more spherical usually, with the exception of the anomaly of Ebola, which I suspect looks so weird because it might actually be engineered. But we don't even need to address that right now. If you go to YouTube and if you just search for bacteriophage, what you'll find is tons of discussion, fear-mongering about how bacteriophages are the most deadly organism in the world or in the universe or something like that, and how they are the most deadliest, or they're killing all these bacteria, etc. And it's very much of a poor understanding of it. The topic of what a bacteriophage is, first, I became aware of it when I understood that Joshua Lederberg, along with Badel and I think Edward Tatum, in the 1940s did work together, which resulted in Joshua Lederberg's Nobel Prize, which was shared by those other two gentlemen, where bacteriophages were used by bacteria in some instances as a way to be able to exchange information, genetic information, to effectively accomplish a method of sexual reproduction with bacteria, even though bacteria are only single-celled organisms. So it suggests that phages, at the very least, have one role, and that is to provide a conduit for information to be shared between bacterium or similar bacterium. Now, the subtypes of bacteriophages and the impacts that they have are far more wide-ranging in that. But that should be something that you need to factor in. Now, you probably have also heard the phrase that the human body has billions or trillions or something or other viruses in it, and some of them are deadly, but most of them we don't really know what they do, right? You probably have heard that before. I know I've heard that before. And as it turns out, if you just search for how many bacteriophages are in the human body, you'll find a couple of very interesting things right off the top. Bacteriophages are the most abundant biological entity in the human body. I'm going to repeat that. Bacteriophages are the most abundant biological entity in the human body. You have more phages in your body than you have cells in your body. You have more bacteriophages in your body than you have bacterium. You have more bacteriophages in your body than you have other entities, which we can call exosomes, or some will want to call them viruses, or whatever. The most abundant is bacteriophages. Now, yes, one of the places where bacteria is most prominent in the body is in the gut. Okay, it makes sense. We know you need to have healthy gut. You need to have healthy bacteria. Take probiotics. If you have some sort of dysregulation in your gut biome, etc. And you go, okay, so maybe these phages, they just stay there. Well, we absorb 30 billion phages into our body every day. Jonathan Cooey said phages can cross the barriers of the intestines and get into the body. Now, that may sound like, whoa, why would you want to do that? And what Jonathan Cooey is on the path to showing, okay, putting these pieces together, and this is stuff which has been discussed elsewhere, but for some reason, and I can only imagine why, actually, I have a suspect I know why, it's been poorly misrepresented. Matter of fact, it's been butchered almost intentionally. These phages from the gut that are related to bacterium in the gut are entering the body. Now, why would they do that? First of all, it suggests that the gut is designed to allow those phages to enter the body. And these bacteriophages are the most abundant biological entity in the human body, inside and including the microbiome of the gut. The discussion should not be there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. I mean, yeah, I guess. The discussion should be, why is that happening? And then you can find out, without having to dig too far down, the enemy of my enemy, new insights regarding bacteriophage mammalian cell interactions. In other words, bacteriophages can get inside cells. So the cells in the human body can take in bacteriophages. Again, the question should be, well, is it because they're infecting them? Well, not necessarily. And Jonathan went over this today. And I'll repeat one thing that Jonathan said. There's no book that studies human illness caused by bacteriophages. Why does no book exist? No encyclopedia, but there's tons of books that exist about how viruses, whatever they are, can cause illness. Isn't that crazy? Why is that? Okay, so let's go to the other thing. Why is it that viruses can only be studied if we have access to bacteria and use bacteria cultures to make them? However, bacteria and bacteriophages can be studied without the use of anything called a virus. These should lead you to start to think, well, whoa. How much of what we thought was happening because of all of this other virus stuff is happening because we are in a world with an incredibly rich orchestration, symbiotic relationship between bacterium. And I don't mean just the gut. I mean inside cells and bacterium communicating from cells to the gut and vice versa. There are so many systems at play here. How many of these billions or trillions of entities are actually part of a rich orchestration of how cells work and cell metabolism with the other entire microbiome of the digestive system? As Jonathan Cooey said, why do all of these people who are supposedly vaccine skeptics, all people who've worked with the gut, why is Andrew Wakefield really a gut expert? He did a lot of work with Crohn's disorder. Why is it that when we played that, I think it was that 1999 or year 2000, United States Senate hearing where they were going over all of the issues with the MMR and the autism, and Andrew Wakefield is there and another doctor from England is there, why did they talk nonstop about finding viruses in the gut? Is it possible that Andrew Wakefield was recruited to do this and he looked back in his little Rolodex of names and the whole concept of finding a scientist to someday run an institute that talks about emerging viruses leaping off of animals, leaping off of bats and onto poor passerbyers in caves, was actually a co-author of his, Peter Daszak. Instead of bacterium and phages being over here in the side and some little corner issue that for some reason people who don't believe viruses exist, they'll never mention it. They will never mention phages. Phages are they're not just the most abundant organism within the human body. Bacteriophages are the most abundant organism.
Or to be more specific, I should say biological entity.
On the planet. I'm going to play a little video clip here.
Take a look around. From the big to the small, the visible to the invisible. Life is everywhere. The smallest unit of life is called the cell, and your body is made up of 30 to 40 trillion of them. But if you took the total number of bacteria on your body right now, that number would outnumber your body cells 10 to 1, making us theoretically 90% bacteria. Now that's a lot of bacteria, but can you imagine the total number of bacteria on Earth? It's a ridiculously high number, and we all know bacteria can survive almost anywhere on the planet. Now take that total number of bacteria on the planet and add to it every other living thing, from birds to mammals, fish, add it all on. What number do you get now? What's the total number of living organisms on Earth? What if I told you that it didn't matter because there's an entity on Earth that outnumbers every living thing combined that you guys probably don't even know about? Bacteriophages.
Bacteriophages, or phages for short, are viruses that infect bacteria cells. They are by far the most abundant and diverse biological entities on the planet, totaling 10 to the 31st in population. To put that in perspective, there are 1 billion times more bacteriophages on Earth than stars in the observable universe. There are 10 billion times more phages than every grain of sand added up on Earth. Lastly, if you added the net worth of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Warren Buffett together and multiplied that number by 1 trillion, you'd still have 100 million times less money than the total number of bacteriophages on the planet.
So those are just some wild numbers to throw out there. I've heard that every tablespoon of ocean water has approximately 10,000 bacteriophages in it, if not 100,000. These things are so abundant, it's mind-boggling how many of these things there are. They are everywhere. We are in an ocean of them. Yet, we are encouraged to simply not think about them. You should go to bed tonight thinking, how is that possible? That the most abundant biological entity on the planet, by a factor of like 1,000 or 1,000,000, whatever it is not spoken about. And it's interesting that in many ways they have a lot of characteristics of viruses. They have spike proteins. They actually have S proteins, which are on these little legs, which are used to attach to bacteria. They have a way of carrying around genetic information. They are, unlike our exosomes that are shared between cells within our bodies, they usually carry DNA. And this mechanism is a hardened shell, which, when you think about it, would be appropriate because bacteria don't live within the confines of a nice, protected environment of the multi-celled organism, right? All the bacteria, they're kind of swimming around amongst themselves. So they need a hardened way. Whereas cell-to-cell communication within a multi-celled organism, we can use very compact, fragile exosomes sent from cell to cell, and usually single-stranded RNA is usually more than sufficient for cell-to-cell communication. Why is it that we can only study how viruses work? Look up CRISPR and look at this thing. And as a matter of fact, start looking into how cells can take in bacteriophages. Jonathan's laid it all out. You can't make a cuckoo clock cook toast. Cells are designed to welcome them in, and it should not be viewed as we need to fight them. The point is they are part of our system. If we don't have bacterium giving us energy, and if we don't have a communication system in place between our cells and that bacterium, we die. We don't exist without this. We do not exist without this. We do not exist without this method of communication from our cells to our gut biome. We do not exist. It's not a matter of, oh, good, bad, and we need to get rid of them, and so on and so forth. And most of the videos on bacteriophages are purely about them killing bacteria. And yeah, there do appear to be ways that they kill lots of bacteria, or bacteria use them and reproduce. There's a lot of things going on, but there is a relationship. And also, you're going to find, although it won't be highlighted, an abundance of papers about how phages are actually being used to research methods to regrow human tissue. They are such a big part of the cooperation
among systems and biological entities and processes within the human body, and not just with humans, but with all mammals.
They are actually being studied from the perspective of slowing down aging and enabling regrowth of tissues. There is this whole field. It is so much bigger than you can imagine. But it's buried. And it's been misconstrued more and more, really ever since it started in the 50s and 60s, 1950s, but it's gotten worse more and more every year. And it's just this world of viruses. So the Biology 101 is going to, I'll let Jonathan cover it. All I can say is I'm very, very excited. I think one of the reasons why I had to say this now is because as we go through these books, and I keep highlighting how important the anthrax vaccine in particular was. Well, you'll see. And this is why I think Tom Cowan and others are paid to never mention this. They just want to say viruses don't exist. Well, that's great. How do you explain the most abundant biological entity on the planet? Here's the thing. They're not specific to bacteria. So if Tom Cowan or another one of these viruses don't exist, we just need to love each other and there's energy and so on. Why are these things going into cells? Why are they a necessary part of us being able to exist?
This guy is capable of going a long way.
We do not exist without them. So you can't just dismiss it as it's just bacteria stuff, because
They get to pass through the gut barrier.
by design, it's getting into cells by design. We live with these things. By design. If you want to say it's because of evolution, well, have at it. Go for it. In that case, we've evolved to need this. We've evolved to have this symbiotic relationship.